Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for attending today, our talk about how to kind of create to yourself an agentic AI function and see how we can help you understand, first of all, how it works. Second of all, do some applied examples using ChatGPT, not because it's the best, because it's the most commonly used one. And whatever you actually do in this model, it'll be very similar to what you would have done in a different model or a different LLM. So let's start by saying that I still don't have any declarations since my last talk, and that I want to start by just giving you not so technical explanations of what large language models do and how they work. So you probably all came across this when you are trying to Google something and how it actually predicts the next word. In a sense, this is what large language models tries to do. It tries to understand or predict the next word, the next that is going to come. And it's one of the things that is the most annoying for me when I'm actually trying to search any medical topic when it comes to in dogs or in cats. And like, I have no idea why these are so many of the top related searches on stuff that I think are very medical and to me very human, that in dogs comes the next word after any medical literature kind of diagnosis or treatment search. But this is only predicting the next word, which LLMs do more than that. They actually try to understand what you're trying to do. So basically, what it tries to do is navigate a very complex world of words that have relationships. You know, there are contexts, and in these contexts, certain phrases, certain words are more likely than the other. Does not mean it is only these words that are directly related to the first term, like something treatment. There are other dimensions of what also treatment can relate, not just in the medical treatment. We can say it about behavioral, how you can treat a person with kindness or such and such, but these are not necessarily the most commonly used ways. So there's always context of what this tries to do. And basically, it identifies the keywords, see what common words are associated with them, give them weight of the probability, and that it's actually going to choose a few to keep it in this understanding. So it searches for the next level of words, and then it comes to a better group of tokens that actually brings it closer to understanding or comprehending or reasoning whatever you are trying to search. So it actually pushes the output to you. Okay? So, for example, when you are putting this search, we are entering data visualization empowers users to. First function is to tokenize what you have inputted. And the token is basically either a word or a part of a word that means something. So empowers is M empowers, for example. So that's why it's now 2 token. And that takes it into a number of processes that are used with neural networks to try to predict what these words are associated with, together what they bring closer to the other phrases or words or tokens that are associated with, give them ranking, and based on that ranking, you'll say, I'm going to take this much of them and introduce them as part of the tokens that I'm actually going to continue working on with layers and layers to getting to the point of what understanding what it's actually saying, and then bringing back explanations or kind of results related to these tokens that have been put in. And that is why whenever you ask about something, it always, first of all, gives you a compliment, and then it actually defines that thing, because that's one thing that actually is grabbed, so it actually wants to use it, so it defines it to you, gives you a more example, and then it starts answering the question. And it says, because these are the things that are typically grabbed with these tokens, the first and the kind of on the highest level, we've already started answering the questions, actually the definitions of these terms or concepts or questions. So tokens are the number one part of the input. Like this is your input, you're putting tokens, and then the actual LLM will actually start looking for words that are related to them, giving them weight, and then bringing them back to their comprehension, and also giving you results based on these words. And you can see here how they actually have ranked. For example, build is 1.96%, whereas a word like create is 11.3%. It's the occurrence of that word in this content. Visualize is actually higher, but again, it's kind of redundant or duplication. That's why it's going to use something new. And that's how it shows create to be the next word, for example. Okay. Now, the next thing, which is how sophisticated this reasoning or this processing is called parameters. And these are basically learned weight of the neural networks, and they define how the model actually processes this. And they are like kind of dials or knobs. And the ChatGPT models have grown exponentially from ChatGPT having about 1.5 billion to ChatGPT 3 having 175 billion. ChatGPT 4 unofficially it's saying 1.76 trillion, and ChatGPT 5 the CFO, shortly after the release, said it's about 17 trillion parameters. And I'm going to try to explain them visually afterwards. But understand that the more parameters you are using, the more capability you have to understand and generate complex language. And also, the more they actually are, the more computational need you're going to have as well, because they actually are using more resources to calculate these. Eventually, these are all calculations, as you can see here. It's going to put a percentage chance of this actually being something out of them, what you are looking for. It's not actually understanding, it's actually more matching the words with other sets of words, and that's actually how it works. So it's not saying it's dumb or it has no imagination or something. It's just a very different way from what we envision reasoning and thinking to be on the human level. So this is about a very kind of a rudimentary, very basic way of demonstrating what a neural network is. So in the pink area, you have the input part. And these, let's say we have three tokens or three input components. And then you have layers of what they call neural network. They are hidden layers inside of them. And between each token and each potential layer, you're going to have kind of a way of testing which one and imagining which one we can become more reasonable. So it kind of goes to parallel universes each time and kind of tries to see which one is more realistic. So it actually tries all the kind of the possibilities before it actually generates the output, which is the one all the way in the green on the left side, which is one circle. So parameters basically it tells you how many actually of these relations you might actually have in this. So for the first layer, the way to calculate it is 3 times 4, because you actually can actually match this one to 4, this one to 4, this one to 4, plus these 4 as a single parameter too. So that becomes 16. And then the second layer, it's actually 4 trying to match 4. So it's 4 times 4, 16, plus the 4 here as another separate parameter. That brings it to 20. And then on the last level is 4 and 1. So 4 times 1 is 4 plus 1 is a 5 is a parameter. So this is how parameters work. And imagine that you now, according to ChatGPT or these language models, they actually kind of hold on to a million token at a time, up to a million token as they process. So they actually find about a million unique word or unique phrase, like a part of a word that actually can go and reason. And they typically go in the text, like they take the out and is that. They actually look for actual words that are definitive. So if you actually have a book that is in a book cloud, the most common word is going to be a, the, is, he, like all these will be stripped away, and then actually other words become the driving tokens that actually goes into this kind of filtration process or kind of a annotation that happens before that, and then that is pushed through layers and layers, 11, 12 hidden layers of parameters that actually keep processing for you to actually get to the output that you actually are trying to get. Now, the machine has to make some decisions, or at least has to be given some guidance in terms of how many of these results it actually should, because eventually word relations are like it happens. People can actually put weird word combinations in books and in training data, and eventually these either become like erroneous or actually not that commonly used, so not very helpful. So the case sampling or the top case sampling is a way to say, I am going to limit myself for each one of these actually matching to the top number of results, meaning I'm going to take the 5 or the 10 most likely or the highest percentage to actually use as part of what I'm actually going to truncate. Okay, so basically, if you put it as 5, then the model is going to use the 5 top results. 50, now we're actually talking about a broader, more diverse set of words. We're going to take the top 50 results to actually grab from them and try to guess or reason with them. So the lower K is safer. It's like the most repetitive ones. And that's why in cats and in dogs, for some reason, are commonly searched kind of additional phrases. And that's why they appear even out of context in a lot of these Google searches, because the K there is not put very high. It's actually, I mean, you can see it ranked in these like few kind of suggestions they have, the first 5 or 8 that actually appear to you. But the higher the K, the higher the variation that you're going to have. And they're going to actually have possible surprises. They can be good, discovering something that you have never thought there's a relationship between this and that. Based on the semantics that you have built in that field, for example, or bad, where now you actually are jumping from looking at medical literature for some reason because the K is so high, and now you're grabbing fiction results. And this is one of the reasons why you see the hallucination, the delusion that the AI goes to, because now the focus have shifted into a field that is not necessarily part of what it initially started looking at, because of how many times you've iterated and put it in, put content in, and you kind of have to wash out some of the tokens that are already part of what has been, and then you shift the game into a different territory because you have this K a bit lax and it's actually being pushed towards results that are far from the beginning point when you had the conversation first. So for example, here, you're trying to sort and select for the top K of 3, so you choose, okay, the word was mat, cat, so the actual phrase was the cat sat on a and mat, table, chair, the 3 top results. So the top K is now going to only choose these 3 and not choose building or a car, although there's occurrences of these being reported in the training data or in the actual word cloud that this machine has thought through, but they're then going to actually take it into consideration. The last dimension that you use is what they call temperature. Temperature controls the randomness of the model output. Okay, am I going to spew out something very kind of creative or spooky or crazy? Or am I going to be very deterministic and giving all the safest response? I'm going to try to actually stick to the directly related answer when you're actually trying to give this. So when you set the temperature on 0, the code is very deterministic. It does not actually give you anything outside of what actually been prompted to in a very rigid way. But if you give it around 0.7, now you have some balanced creativity and accuracy. 1 or 1 plus is now much more diverse, creative, and risky, because now it actually can bring you results that are not necessarily part of the ordinary, which might be good or bad again. So an example, once upon a time, there was you put a temperature of 0, Once upon a time, it's always a fairy tale. Fairy tale has a princess. Princess lives in castle, so that kind of becomes the safest bet for it to say this is the most commonly used kind of example or context. Put it at one. Now it says, once upon a time, there was a robot who solved mysteries. Creative. It's not very usual. It's still in the realm of like reasonable stuff to expect out of a storyline. A temperature of 1.5. Once upon a time, there was a cloud of dreams that sang melodies. Now, that could be poetry in a sense, but also could be nonsense. But again, it's a group of words that came that kind of builds a narrative or a context, not necessarily the most applicable or realistic or common. It could be good or bad. If you're trying to write poetry, maybe this is a line you're going to like and put in your song. Or you actually, if you're trying to write an essay, this makes no sense, and you have to actually say, tone it down, please. I need you to be more kind of uh, bound by your temperature. So again, this is basically how LLMs work. You put a set of tokens in, you have parameters that actually control what results come in, and they actually have Ks and temperatures to control how many of these potential rankings or listings I'm going to actually use, and how I'm going to actually am I going to always stick to the top result because the temperature is so low, so I want to always match to the highest or the three highest, or give it some room to say, I'm going to get the 50 highest, or the 20 highest, or 100 highest, and make reason out of these all together. There's always this fine tuning that is very important, and that's why sometimes you do that on the run by you prompting or giving templates or putting certain keywords to actually ground what it actually does. So in the past, when I used to use, for example, ChatGPT 3 and even up to 4, I used to tell it, please only use peer-to-peer references such as articles or journals that are PubMed indexed. So then I will give it the creativity to go grab me from the life hack or some other resources because they're popular, common in part of the training data to give me health advice. I want it to come from something like PubMed, peer-reviewed articles, or Caution, or something like that. So that is one way of actually you toning down the temperature and kind of controlling some of the case. Say, no, no, don't go grab me stuff from like kind of a nutritional supplement website that is advertising for this. I want you to give me more kind of realistic data by saying what I want is from this source. Okay. Now we're gonna do some like hands-on or interactive session where I'm gonna show you how I use the AI chatbots or like the AI LLMs to do some of my administrative work. And because we are academic physicians, I'm going to show you a case of using it to write a letter of recommendation. And then I'll show you like how generically it would have been produced, how fine tuning and templating would actually change it to become what it actually is. I'm going to go to ChatGPT, our favorite friend here. Okay, you see I have open evidence too here open. I use more than one. So let's say, write me a letter of recommendation for Dr. Fatima Oglu, who is going for internal medicine residency. Okay. Don't care about your grammar or your spelling because again, these are things that the tokenization processing takes care of. Okay. So this is the letter of recommendation. There, so and so. Let picture that I recommend Dr. Fatima Oglu, the military residency program. I've worked closely. It just kind of gives you the very generic way of trying to say what it actually can grab as the most commonly used phrases from templates that fit what you have asked. A letter of recommendation. So it's gonna talk to the committee and give a pleasure, and then say that I have worked with. If you actually have put, okay, I wanted for an internship in an accounting firm, it's going to use something similar in the verbiage. And then so and so. There's a schema for this, but this is very, very kind of generic. Okay. So more personality and specific. Now it's asking you, okay, do you want to include so and so about this person? Let me show you now. If I go here and say add photos and files and go to my drive and use some of the things that I prepared for this demo and say, this is the file for her CV, and this is the template I'm going to use. And this is my old, one of my old letters of recommendation that I wrote for someone that I'm using as a template. Okay. Now say using CV attached. And if you actually put in multiple files, you can actually say, and then I'm name the file, for example, FOCV 25. We write the letter of recommendation using this template, the file made, let LOR. So now you can tell the difference because at least me, I always try to introduce myself to the reader of the letter. My name is so and so, and it should actually have grabbed my name and put it here, my institution, and other stuff. You could say, put my credentials from the signage that I have in the letter, and actually takes it to a different journey. And now it actually had kind of did some uh, editing to it. Said talked about her specialty rotation in nephrology in Vanderbilt, and she worked with us in infectious disease and so on. So now it became even more uh, kind of like in the same schema of what you have been awarded it, actually use some of her experiences to come and actually talk more about her. And you can say, highlight this research project that I worked with her, and then it's going to actually also put the verbiage into it. And now with one hit, you got from a very generic letter that has been like really saying not much about this physician because it talks about everything that everyone talks about in the recommendation. Remember when we talked about the mean, the average, why averages suck? They represent no one. The example we talked about, if you remember, us on the call with an average, when you average our net worth, and it's somewhere about like $500,000, but none of us actually are in that is on that point exactly, and then how one value can actually put it. So the one size fits none, basically, right? And now this actually is now more fitted of what you use as a language and what the schema for this kind of profession is. Like different fields use different kind of formats or different ways to kind of communicate among each other. So there's a protocol or an etiquette for letters of recommendation that are in medicine, very different from folks actually probably doing them for a software engineer leaving to a different company. So that is how in one hit you actually get something that is very ready. You can say, add my credentials to the letter. Let's see if it actually put it in the right way. So now see, I'm actually all realistic here, and I see my signature. Yes. So now I actually had filled, and it's ready for you to copy. Maybe briefly, kind of screen, and then now it has your name, your language, your focus, and her achievements in a ready state. So it's an assistant, and the more capacity you build in it, the easier for you to actually use it in a better way. Can you go back and actually say, after a week or two, use the same for this uh, CV? You can, but remember, a lot of time, because they want to empty and use less computation, they're going to empty the token. So even if you're actually on the same thread, it's always the best practice for you to go and re-prompt it, give the template and with the CV, for example. And remember to also say again with a couple of words, it would actually save you from iterating and reading and then discovering and redoing the game. So a letter of recommendation becomes something that is like a breeze for you. And I know a lot of folks actually used to dread it. Actually, I actually created one of my first startup was it's called Your Plus, and it's still live until now, where people can go and have their faculty just fill a questionnaire and this automatically generated that recommendation would have been generated using much more rudimentary technology. So that's now obsolete. But now this is now life saving, and for you, you are able to save time. And for folks who are not well equipped to, or like not very sophisticated in writing letters, it still can help them using this and giving it more context and getting something that they could not have gotten on their own. So this is an example of how you can use this to train doing anything. You can use it to actually write manuscripts. You can use it to actually fill a poster. The best thing you can do, get an example, like a template, and give as much information either in your prompting or in a file that has what you need for it to do, for it to be able to be grounded in more tokens that are relevant to what you're trying to do, and for it to spew out something that is more meaningful and useful for you. You don't want to keep using it in the rudimentary way where you actually have to keep either kind of correcting it or prompting it again and adding more details. Now, this is something that this is your language. It's actually use whatever verbiage I use in my letter to write someone else's letter. So, and this is what everyone does. We actually have a way of communicating that and have a kind of a signature way of writing. And now it has that uh, ready for you to be deployed automatically on different letters. So this is one example of how you can use LLMs to help you with administrative tasks. Now, because I'm trying to make this interactive, I would love to for you to give me any questions that we can talk about and see, okay, what do you think about that? How can we do this and that before we move into second and probably a bit more exciting and useful example with the data set that Dr. Khurshid Mohammed has provided for me, and we're going to try to also use that to see how we can utilize our research assistant. So any questions from the audience, please feel free to open your mics and ask or just type something.
Abdullah, maybe I can start waiting for people to put their questions in Q&As. One of the things I find is doesn't work well when the ChatGPT or any other AI platform, when you ask them or they suggest to put it in a document for you. So if they generate a Word document or generate PDF document for me, it's usually empty or has a partial information. So I have to prompt it again. I say, no, just post the information here. So then I go and copy paste it to whatever format I want. So I wonder if you face the same.
Yes, and so for example, if you tell it, give me the best 1,000 restaurants in Illinois, for example, it will give you 10 to less than 50 if you actually do this after you found it's almost always less than 50 results. And it tells you, okay, do you want more? And the reason for it doing that is it's trying to conserve the computational and kind of utilization. It does the same with the output. It does not want to put a lot of computational output. It takes it more to generate than actually take in, by the way. So the computational power is almost always on the output side and then actually input. So you can put input could be like a 100-page document that's easy for it to digest, but putting it a 10-page document out of that 100 is is more taskful for it than actually taking in 100 pages. And that's basically what it happens. And I agree with you. And not only that, a lot of time it's in a different format. So you use the highlighted, the bolded that they actually have done themselves. Like here, for example, highlighted her name, my name, for or did this italic. When it comes out, a lot of time it is not in the same format or that they actually have created there. So it's always easier for me to copy paste it here and put it in a document and then put the emblem or the heading and just printed it. Yeah, I agree with you. And even when it does that for if you're asking for results in a table, it almost never kind of export a full table. Even if I keep asking it, sometimes just kind of after 100 results, it just stops doing that. And that's why there are more specific models for you. And used to be like a model in four that was designed for this type of work because you should be able to upload, for example, a sheet with a million fields and tell it, okay, fill the empty gaps or uh, uh, replace this with that, and it, being able to do that easily. It's just that the way the general LLMs are designed, especially with this type of use, is to conserve the amount of computational consumption that they actually do. And that's why it does that.
And I think the best combination I find and I learned by trial of errors is to upload the template. For example, I have a platform for to create MCQs, and that platform called Thinkific, it takes a specific template that they provided, and providing that template and then asking the GPT to post the table in the chat the dialogue, and then I copy paste it into the another template downloaded by the platform. Because even when I feed the template and then it generates a template for me to download, that downloaded Excel file is not complete. It always more complete in the chat window itself rather than the downloadable links I find.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't see questions. That the other thing I find, and I wanted to pick your brain on, is that the input that we are putting, I learned that it limits us to few thousand words. So it's always better to upload a document for the AI to read it and then it add some prompts for that document than copy pasting few thousand words into your dialog window and ask it to handle it. So I find that the results are more accurate that way.
Correct. Yes, that's why what I did is I actually uploaded the CV instead of putting it as a prompt because for the prompt, it is trying to understand word by word what the prompt is saying. But the document is a repo for it to actually easily use content from it. So it can scan it and say, okay, this is because he said this is a CV. I understand what the CV is. So I understand that this in this context going to mean this, this, and that. So it becomes easy for it to match it to what it is, so it kind of reasons better with it. But if you actually copy paste it, then actually it's gonna skim through it word by word and say, what is he trying to say? And then figure out at the end, oh, this is a CV, instead of using it as a repo data that actually going to go use prompt. So yeah,
And
better for any data, yeah, to be in a repo file.
yeah, it's interesting that the rules of communication with AI, it's very similar to the rules of communicating with humans, like having clear language, clear instructions, setting out the boundaries, and then providing them with a template that they can work with. It's not that different.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure if this is necessarily. I think because there's still some need for them to get guidance from us, that we guide them the way we guide
Hmm.
other employees or like junior faculty or junior staff. What at one point when they kind of get more comfortable or like more trained on certain processes, I don't think they're gonna necessarily be functioning the same way. I think that the machine logic is very different from our logic
Hmm.
and probably superior in a sense, but until they reach the point of proficiency and fluency and mastery, let's say, of that field. So if you build like uh, let's say we're gonna do an LLM for letters of recommendations, and then you have to put letters of recommendation samples with scores. And this is 10 out of 10, this is 9 out of 10, this is 6 out of 10, this is 2 out of 10. And out of these, a new logic would have been built that is going to spew the 10 out of 10s much kind of clearer and fluid, and actually be able to highlight stuff that we never thought it's a worthy of mention, or like it will have a different way of going through it than we actually do ourselves, because then they're going to see it mathematically, not just reasoning the way we reason, as like we analyze, we put things in context. I mean, the context for them is like, I want to understand this set of words connect to what set of other words. It's not like a context of there's no social context, there's no historical context necessarily, unless there's something in the training data that brings these phrases or words closer on the cloud of the network connected words.
Yeah, no, that's fair point.
Yeah.
I don't see any questions, but I think you
Okay.
can. Yeah.
So now we're going to talk about how we can use our enthusiastic research assistant, and ChatGPT or any of these large language models are good as long as you know what you're doing with them. So Dr. Khurshid gave me a set of kind of mock data, I would assume, in these demo files. Let's review it together. It's always good to understand the anatomy of the data you actually are putting in. So mode of delivery has one, two, three, I assume, uh, uh, options. And hypertension, GDM, mixed drug use has twos and ones, to assume yes and no instead of zeros and ones. There were ones and twos here. Is that correct, Dr. Khurshid?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Same for the stage G. You have three different answers. Uh, uh, Gestational age week is a numerical value that is easy. Gender, I assume one will be either male or female, and the other one will be same. This is kind of uh, like a numerical value of birth weight in grams. It's very easy. Apgar score is also similar. So now we understand what was the context of this data being collected, and what are you trying to get out of this, so we can guide our clinician.
So our outcome will be in the MRI findings and the EEG findings. So if you look at the end of the brain injury, I think it will be somewhere. Uh, Number, seizure, went home, blood pressure. Yeah, brain injury, the number U. So that's the
Okay.
one Johnson after, yeah. So this will be the main outcome, whether
Okay.
one will be they had brain injury, and zero will be they had normal MRI, no brain injury. And some of the other outcome will be hospital stay, that variable that you can see there, and then whether they had seizure or not, that would be another outcome. And then we were trying to find exposures, for example, the stage of HI, those 1, 2, 3 that you have seen there, and their correlation with the outcome, and whether the birth weight and gestational age and those different variables has impacted as a confounding factors of the
Mhm.
outcome. Yeah.
Okay. So let's go together to a new, always good to have a fresh page, because you can replace it from any other um, tokens, and upload the file that we have the data on, the data set. Let's say using this data set of zero, for example, let's take a look at us. Let's say we are trying to see if there's a correlation between Apgar 10 and brain injury. Is that a good kind of a thing to look at?
Yeah.
Okay. Explore the relationship between our N um, and it's always like this is a score, and then uh, take the variable in U, which is brain injury MRI. It's always helpful to guys tell exactly which ones, because a lot of time the names U equals no, one equals yes. And then, so let's see how this will actually result now. Okay. So it uploaded the data set, tells you, okay, now it's not actually in my cloud and my memory. So now it plotted it to you for you to see how like variable the Abdullah score is in the so zero was no brain injury, correct?
Correct, yeah.
And one had a brain injury. So the scores that are kind of narrower are associated with brain injury was associated with a narrower Abgar score in the range of 6 to 7 compared to the other ones, which is ranging from 4 to 8. I'm not sure how clinically this, how relevant this is for you. Mean Abgar score for brain injury at 10, it appears to be higher in one for some reason. Maybe it's actually flipped, because zero is yes and one is no. Or does it make sense for you clinically?
So the lower the Apgar, the worse is, and the higher the Apgar, the better the status of the baby is.
Yeah, so a lower Abgar score should be associated with higher, but here's
Yeah.
showing the opposite kind of.
Mm. Mm. It's a mock data though, like
Yeah,
it's not
uh,
accurate data.
yeah. Okay, so now it gives you all these, no injury. Okay, um, so it calculated the p-value and everything. Now here is an example. Let's say, so when you are looking at an outcome, there is two way of looking at an outcome. It's either the presence or the absence of it, and that's then it's a kind of a by choice, zero or one. And for that, using something like statistical regression or statistical regression is the best way of using it. However, if you are using this in a clinical setting to say there's a time component to this, I'm looking at mortality at 90 days, for example, or time to mortality, then Cox score is better. So the machine does not understand it. Typically, let's say, what method was used to calculate p-value? That's what. And sometimes it's nice to actually ask a question about how it's reasoning. Okay, independent sample t-test, because this is a single variable. Yeah. Okay. So for the relationship different area set, and say what other outcome can we look at here. Um,
So hospital stay could be one good one.
uh,
Hospitals.
okay. Here, also one other way of us making sure that we actually help it to say zero and, for example, here one and typically if it's zero and one, it's easier for the machine to understand. One and two is confusing because you don't know which one is one is two, yes or no. So a lot of time either flip it to zero and one, or actually change if it's universal here and say in these change two to yes and one to no, for example, if it's 1 2, and here if it's 1 2 3, actually try also that this is I'll leave it either as a kind of a ordinal, like 1 2 3 as kind of order, or change it with the actual kind of a meaning for each one of them.
So it can actually clean your data if you like. So that's another use of this.
Absolutely. So a
Yeah.
lot of time, yes. Like for example, you can tell like, a lot of times data is put through a questionnaire like input, and there's variation in how they word certain words. It actually can do that on its own, and actually can prompt it to say, clean the data, make sure the variable answers are uniform, and it does that for you very easy, and then you can run the study on it. So let's do option number one, then two. So one is gonna actually do a multivariable linear regression model, predicting the hospital length of stay from the clinical predictors. Okay.
Abdullah, this is very powerful. Like I have used this now. If we have a basic knowledge of good knowledge of statistic and methodology, this save you lots of time. And my question always this, how accurate this is. Do I need to go back and do any statistics, or if I am happy with my variables and the way I coded them, I know that this methodology and this verbiage is sounding, giving my knowledge, is that good? Is that accurate? The p-values and the stuff that is showing me here.
So yes and no, because like so calculating the statistical significance is another thing that is very important for us to uh, like understand that they might grab the easiest or the most commonly used in this kind of setting statistical tool, and sometimes it might be the right thing. Uh, Sometimes it's not the right thing. So you know,
Sorry, I meant the computation part of it. So if I think this is the right tool or right method for this
it's
question,
no, it's going to be accurate. It's going to be
okay,
accurate.
so
To
that
tell
was my
use this
question.
model, this statistical tool, and run it. Yeah, it will abide by what you have. And here it actually was prompting me to either use Python and you know set myself or do it or doing it itself, and then
Yeah, no, but this is huge.
yes,
It's really save you lots of time
yeah.
and open possibilities for people who have a fair knowledge of statistical methodology. You don't need to be a statistician to be able to do all this.
So here is one thing: write a manuscript. This is a again because it is like the letter of recommendation kind of template that is being used. It is not the best way you can do uh, uh, to write a manuscript. You can use this as a template, kind of a for the structure that we're going to be using. What I have noticed to be the best is to write it section by section, say, and write a background for this study that already prompted in analysis, focusing on one, two, and three, and typing uh, data that is relevant in the AMA format. So you give it instructions as if it's really like a young research assistant writing it with you. Use AMA format for the references. Use this kind of like peer-reviewed article source and highlight this because now it highlighted the most common thing that actually okay it is gonna give you whatever kind of generic term to kind of introduce the studies might be doing something different because now the last thing we did was the length of stay focused on that. But when you say my study is to study the relationship between this and that, and this is my primary outcome, my secondary outcome, and then write me the beginning, write me the methodology, write me the results, and then you actually get that result. Uh, and sometimes what I would do is actually take something like this that the machine has written with me with my proper and say enrich or or say rewrite, and it's gonna see now it's actually putting some statistics, doing other stuff. Uh, put references using AMA format. And the same way that you don't necessarily trust your junior research assistant to submit without you reviewing this very carefully, do the same. One of the most common sources of sources of kind of hallucination is this. It either comes up with stuff that are unrelated or it makes up actually, because for them, this is something that they can build from scratch and they can actually put some author's name, put some titles, and put some random magazine. So make sure that you actually, and you can say provide links for each of the articles you cited. And then you actually just click on them and see at least it's a real article. So use it with caution because I've reviewed a couple of manuscripts that were written by AI by folks who really didn't put any effort in them, and they were so generic, so wrong, and like it makes you feel like you're like as someone who submitted that type of work, that you are not doing it. This is not respectable work say the least. So always do it with a proper oversight, proper verification, because eventually it's a machine that is matching without necessarily understanding. Yes, it's actually understanding in a sense because it's looking at context and relationship and trying to reason, but it's not a budding neonatologist that you can actually rely on to know this is relevant, this is not. You cannot actually, and you, for this, like, oh, a study from 1991, yes, the terms are actually relative, but a lot of time we say, no, no, listen, there was a paper in 2023 that changed the entire concept about this. And this is very common in human literature, like especially over the last 20 years, we've been doing a lot of revising and saying, oh, no longer applied, no longer applied, no longer applied. So make sure that you actually are aware of that. You can say, use references from the journal of so and so and the journal of so and so from the last 5 years. That's helpful. Again, but you have to go verify and use it with caution. So it is a very powerful tool as long as you're doing two things. You know your domain knowledge and what you're trying to do, and you are verifying the outcome it's actually giving for you because the room for hallucination is differential. Like it's not going to hallucinate in the analytics that they actually did, but it's going to hallucinate when it's trying to write you a paragraph or grab you a reference or something. So you know the error, the most likely error to be encountered. They are very good uh, calculators. Amazing. This is all they do. This is calculation, A to Z. But then there are stuff that are not necessarily going to be easy to extrapolate from accurate calculations to accurate referencing, to accurate phrasing, to accurate so and so. And a lot of times it's a couple of words that throw the entire thing out of the window into the garbage can. And by this, I would have concluded the demo and again, open for questions from the audience about like prompting, about the ways to run it, about the limitations, ideas, questions.
Yeah, if you can raise your hand or put your question in the chat, that would be great. One of the strategies that I use, Abdullah, here is if I want to use this as true my scientific writer, I write the meat of the subject. Let's say the meat of the abstract, the meat of the background, the meat of the methodology. And then I ask ChatGPT or any GPTs to proofread it, verify it, and expand it. And for the
Mhm.
references, what I find it helpful is to cross reference it with other AI models, the ones that they are scientific, like for example, Open Evidence and Perplexity. If you plug in the references, it can tell you these are the actual references or not, and it should give you the links to those references. And the other thing I find also helpful is if I finished a paragraph, I'm happy with it, I wrote it, I went back and forth with any AI platform that I'm using, then I can take chunk of those paragraphs one by one and you can plug it into Open Evidence or Perplexity and it can give you references for the paragraphs that you have written through other AI platforms. And all you need then is to go back to it and personally proofread it and add some of the references that you think as you mentioned, that they are newer references, they are known because you have the domain knowledge that, you cannot miss for example, related to HIE, there are some landmark therapeutic hypothermia papers that AI may have missed it, and you
Mhm.
can't miss it in a manuscript that you have to read it. That I find that interaction between the human and the AI is the most useful, and that's where it saves time. And at the same time, you are keeping the safeguard of the person who have the knowledge domain that can verify that this is actually legit, reasonable, relatable, and practical information without hallucination.
The biggest role we can play currently in the next 10 years is to act as safeguards for the output that this is creating. Because all this output, keep in mind, is going to be data for the future training of the models. And there are always all these experts who talk, say AI took over all these jobs and kept doing whatever it does. Eventually, there's something that they call it's called revert to the mean. It's gonna go to a very average and then completely false and meaningless outputs because it's gonna keep repeating the same stuff over and over again. If there's one little thing is wrong or misleading, it's gonna get amplified or normalized because it has been said so many times, and this is how it works. Again, going back to basics, it's the repetition of these words together that makes this relevant, and that's a lot of time. With the error, they actually might actually look at the title of the study and see how relevant it is for your title, but a lot of time they put a funky title or something that's unrelated, and the body of the article is where you have the evidence. So it's completely missing because it's easier for it to screen through the title or the abstract. One advice that also, when I'm writing this, again, add if you're getting an IRB approval because you're going to write a project proposal, use that because you've already kind of given some idea what you want to look at. So add it and say, using this proposal, try to write the methodology for this, or suggest a methodology first. Actually, sometimes actually going to help you even on doing the study itself. What's the best methodology for looking at mortality with this one, two, three? I'm going to tell you, say, okay, what is a good sample size for me to achieve a confidence interval of 95%? Like these will actually be very helpful for you even before you do the study and then afterwards, because now when you have done this and you've done your data collection and coming back, you are building a block by block, instead of just saying, okay, kind of copy paste and give me the most generic. Because again, the message that I try to kind of embed in everyone's head, reverting to the mean is the worst thing. The mediocre letter is the worst thing you can do. The mediocre uh, uh, script, because again, this is averaging all the manuscripts that were written in this language about this topic in one generic one that fits all or close to all. Remember, that's why it's going to keep repeating the same kind of common words or like stuff, even if it's not necessarily related to the focus of the study or the scope of the study, because they're the most commonly associated words with HIE, for example. As simple as that. The HIE, but that presence actually took the study because there was not enough prompting or guardrails. What are the most common 50 words about HIE? And you may be talking about number 51 that you actually have not even put directly in the promptings because it's something that you have not even still defined yet. And that's why always prompting and reprompting and running it multiple times is always a good idea.
Think we have three questions. The chat was one of the things that you mentioned. I think it's also very useful and powerful for AI is when you write a research proposal, and that's give you a kickstart. And one of the talks that I've listened to, and they were mentioning one of the things that AI really helped is to decrease the mental burnout. So to initiate a research proposal, to initiate a manuscript or initiate a reference letter for that matter, it takes lots of mental preparation to make that first step. the AI now is helping you to do maybe 3 steps out of those 10 steps, and then you go back and easily modify and make it the way you like. So it does help in decreasing that mental burnout. So you can read the questions, right, Abdullah
Yes.
is there, yeah.
Yes. So how the ChatGPT is doing stats, how do you report it? Or it was, Khurshid said, you will have to use a JIT software. Now, if you look at what it did when I asked it to do a Cox proportional, it actually gave me the code. It told me how to upload the file and run it myself, or for it to do it on its own. See here, it goes, okay, click install lifelines, and then here's how you reference your data set, and this is what you write as the code. And Python is doing the calculation for you, which is a legit kind of statistical software. Or you can actually, I have belief in actually what it does, as long as you're telling it what to do or asking it, okay, how did you calculate the p-value? When it says I did student T, it must have used student T. It's not going to hallucinate on that because it's a single kind of identifier that already something that it gathered. Okay? That's what I would use. And it does calculation. So for question number one, it does test the way either you tell it or the most commonly way it's done for these sets of words, not necessarily field of study. And that's very different because it's going to look at like 1,000 papers with the HIE, and some of them are retrospective, some of them are sectional, some of them are RCTs, and I'm going to see, okay, what's the most commonly used? And I'm going to use this. And that's big wrong. But if I use this statistical model, then it's a very legit software myself. Who is the author of the manuscript? This is a very important question. Typically, you have multiple authors on the top, and a lot of time, the person who is the last, which is a supervising person, put the least amount of wording to it, right? The bulk was written by the first author, who is a young, aspiring research fellow or something, and they put the biggest chunk of the amount of words. So, word number wise, they are on the top, but your touches gave you the authority to become the last author, the supervising author. You didn't have to add words, you had to add wisdom. So you are that author, okay? And you can always say, I actually used AI. It's not a bad declaration. I think people should start saying, we used AI to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and it was verified by Dr. So and so. So you actually are saying, yes, I use it. I'm accountable to what I'm putting on paper. The review will be done eventually by AI, absolutely, nowadays. And the end user will ask AI to give you a summary of the study. That is absolutely true. And there was a lot of funny stuff where people were submitting manuscripts and they're putting in a very small font in white in the body of the docs file, kind of ways to tell the AI to give it a high score. And they found these and actually made it as a fraudulent submission from some cases because it had manipulated the AI. But again, I'm submitting it to you for a peer review. If you think this peer can be bribed by a sentence or a graph that is in white and hidden, that's on you as a magazine. It's not on me as an author. I mean, it's a race to the bottom in a sense where people are actually going to keep using it on both ends. But again, you can use it to go up and actually produce something that's meaningful because you actually believe in what you have done. You have a novel idea of research. You have a really good outcome that it's actually going to change medicine. Or you're just going to publish another mediocre something that they're going to mediocre review, going to look at, and mediocre AI going to review and give it a score. And honestly, the thing is, all these like evaluation or ranking software are shown to be the least reliable. Like these AI tools that are now out there to tell you this is fraudulent or AI generated submission or not, they're horrible in their scoring. They are not really as good as they actually have on their labels. So, oh, the doctors or the teachers in high schools or now in universities are copy pasting these text that's submissions done by their students and asking them for scores. And a lot of time, AI generated uh, uh, text will get 95% human, and a very human text will get 5% or 7% human. So it's not that great in doing the review, and actually it's very lazy from them to rely on the AI to give it a score. What they should be asking the AI is, okay, give me a summary, and then they can hopefully some interactive AI say, look at their statistical analysis. Is this the best way? They should chat with their AI as if it's a colleague of theirs that they're actually consulting with, instead of having AI give them an automatic score and then they're going blindly with it. Unfortunately, so it's fault on both ends nowadays with using AI, on the receiving end, on the submitting or giving end. So yeah, for number one, the statistical analysis that it does is very powerful. You become the author if you actually have read and refined what it actually gave out. And yes, it's actually going to be reviewed by AI in a lot of these peer-reviewed journals. But I mean, that's what's gonna make the top journals stay the top, because there's someone who is a field expert who's looking at this and signing off of it. And that's why nature is nature. Right? It's not because they have the best AI. It's actually they have that authority on this field and that authority on that field, and they manually look at it and they have enough breadth of knowledge, and hopefully now they actually have augmented that knowledge with AI to be the best one to weigh in and comment on that.
I think, Abdullah, the Elon's questions are lots of important ethical questions. And as you rightly so explain it really nicely, it is happening, and we are seeing two generation or two groups. Some are rely 100% on AI, which is wrong. They ask them to do their stuff, and there is group that they are afraid of using AI, and we're quickly, if we don't catch up and embrace that harness the power of AI, we will become obsolete if we don't do that. And I remember the way I got to know ChatGPT was because of my son. Actually, he was doing some of his homework using ChatGPT, and I was angry because his teacher discovered that. And I said, "You can't do that." And I still remember driving the car with him, and what he was telling me that this is the future calculator, that you are just still not there yet, your generation. And then I said, come show me how it works. And he showed me how he interacted with ChatGPT and how he went back and forth to refine that his question, and it became brilliant at the end. I said, you just converted me. I'll start to use this method. So if we use it as our minions, if we use it as somebody who help us in scut work, it's no different than, as you mentioned, having a first author from trainees. Like if we have 15 author on a paper, are they all contribute the same way, or there is somebody who contributed the most, or somebody is good in English language and they are good in proofreading it, another person is statistician, is good in reviewing the methodology, another person is a senior one. So we in a way acting as a senior author, and now AI has been able to perform all other works that we have been struggling to find helpers in, that whether that's a good English writer or a good statistician, etc., etc. So it's really liberating in a way that what we are stepping into it.
I agree, and the word that you said is the most important, is decreasing the mental burnout or the mental load on us to do what we do best, which is kind of reasoning, thinking, and verifying. And like sometimes actually you learn from the study, and if you do it the way we did it in this kind of copy paste the outcome without actually studying why was the APGAR score this wide and this, why is that, because eventually this is what your role and what the whole purpose of you doing that. So yeah, I mean, eventually it's gonna have to continue to be a collaboration between us and the machine. Uh, I keep reading and hearing about these books that talk about the world of no work and how the machine is going to replace 100% of us. It's going to replace 100% of some tasks that we do, but there are going to be always tasks that are unique, that are brand new, that we're going to be tracking the territories and creating the data to train the machine and then to automate. So we're going to be in the front end with the AI journey. This is my belief, at least.
I
I
agree. I
expect
think
that. Yeah.
it's a good note to end the presentation. This has been great. Thank you so much, Abdullah. Really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
everyone.
Yeah, have a good day.
Absolutely. Bye bye.